Guys, I'm going to make a video about squaring and unsquaring numbers. This is for lesson, it's actually two lessons. It's 1.7, 1.8. And I just want to recap what we did in class. And so we talked about today squaring and unsquaring numbers. And the first thing that we did, if you remember, we had gone through a number of arrays. We had gone through, I had you guys do on the board, arrays for the number 3, such as the one I'm putting down on paper right now, and then we did its match, the 1 by 3 and the 3 by 1, and then we carried on and we did the arrays for the number 4, and we did the turnarounds for that too. And I had you write down the number sentences that go along with it. And every now and then we came up with a number that had an array that looked like this, and it wasn't rectangular, it was square. And so I asked you the question is, why do you think that we have square arrays every now and then, and that we have numbers like the number 4 who has an uneven amount of factors? Because in the number 4 there's a total of 3 factors, whereas for example in the number 3 there's an even number of factors. And we discussed that the reason why there's an odd number of factors in some special numbers is because they do not have arrays with a pair. Well, here is an array, and here's its pair. But the number 4 has a second array, a third array, I guess, that has no pair, the 2 by 2, because it's the same array. So because certain numbers, like the number 4, have arrays that form a square, and we can take a certain factor and multiply it times itself, in other words square it, we call certain numbers like the number 4 square numbers. 4 is a square number because it comes from 2 times 2, or we can say it comes from 2 squared. And remember, that is an exponent, and that is what we call squared when there's basically a little 2 there. If you think about what other numbers are square numbers, we said the number 9 is a square number. Why is it a square number? Because it comes from 3 times 3, or 3 squared. Okay? What else is a square number? Well, we said 3 times 3, so the next one would be 16 because it comes from 4 times 4, or 4 squared. 25, 49, 64, there's a whole bunch of them, right? But they're special because they have that square array, and they come from a certain factor squared. Okay, so these are all square numbers. And then we basically flipped it around and we said, what if we unsquare them? Well, unsquaring it is also known as finding the square root. And that makes sense because a root is where a flower or plant begins, and so if we're going to unsquare something or find the square root, we want to know where it began. So if I want to take this square number of 64 and unsquare it by doing the square root, I'm really asking you is what gave us 64? What squared did it come from? So if you know your facts, you'd be able to quickly tell me that 64 came from 8 times 8. Or we can say 8 squared. So if I were to ask you what is the square root of 64, you would simply respond, Mr. J, the square root of 64 is equal to 8. And that way I know that you know that 8 times itself gave us 64. Okay, that's basically where we worked on today. We practiced a little bit on the calculator and learned some of the buttons on the calculator. Today was primarily about squaring and unsquaring numbers. Okay, have a good one.